I'm going to give the intro and then we're going to go. Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact, where business insight meets startup innovation. And now, your hosts, Brian Sparks and Lisa Helfrich.
Yes, thank you, Brian. The other Brian, the big Brian. Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact. My name is Brian Sparks. We are on Pirate Cat Radio, KPCR 92.9 FM in Los Gatos and beyond. What you're about to hear is edited for radio. I'm your host, once again, Brian Sparks, and this is my co-host, Lisa Helfrich.
Excited to be here. The purpose of this show is to have honest conversations about what it takes to build great businesses and communities so you can make an impact within your own.
Nice. All right. So our show kicks off with a business leader. Today we have James, who you'll meet in a minute. And we also have a startup you will hear from Capella in a minute. We also have a third segment where we have a local business, and you will hear from Joe in a little while, as well as our weekly volunteer executive director, Greg, who you'll hear in a moment. But Lisa, anything we need to say before we get started?
I mean, I'm pumped for today's show. Startup grind, incredible reputation. Can't wait to hear what James has to say about, community and impact. Another incredible startup. Can't wait to learn more. I know you just won a recent competition for what you do, and then we've got one of our very own coaches on the show today.
Yes, that is such a saturated market, so we're going to learn how to stand out. The focus, the values of what Lisa and I are looking to do is to allow people all over the world to get access to Silicon Valley and their resources. So if you're a startup or if you are a small business, you can gain access to the community and resources necessary to accelerate your business. Before we get started, I want to make sure that everybody knows that our guests are not gaining anything monetary or providing anything monetarily, and these are just great stories and great people who we want to integrate into our ecosystem. So with that being said, let's introduce James. James, good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, James. So James is with Startup Grind, and this is one of my favorite events of the year. We're going to talk a little bit about that. James, tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of positions you to be a part of Startup Grind. What are some of the things that you do in order to build that ecosystem? Because they're really good at reaching out and attracting great people and building that community.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is James. I hailed from the UK, moved here in October last year, and engrossed myself into Silicon Valley and what it represents. It's great to be here. I've met so many fascinating people since I landed, including yourself, Brian. So thanks for the invite onto the show. What we see and what we tend to do within the industry is meet cool founders. We try and help them. We try and give and give back to the community. We run events all around the world for founders, for their teams. We help propel them whatever stage of their career they're at and whatever stage of their growth they're at. Connect them with amazing people within our network, whether it's investors, whether it's coaches, and help them propel themselves forward in whatever way they're going forward.
I like that. And so one thing that you can count on from Lisa and I during this show is not only to provide great content and have great questions so that you can do something with this information that we provide, but we promise you we will be messy. So I just want everybody to breathe and be yourselves. Let's remember this is a family show, so remember to keep that language to a minimum. But let me ask you this, James. You don't come in here cold. You don't come into this experience new. You have a background in startup. Can you tell our listeners, before we really kind of get into what Startup Grind does for the startup ecosystem, can you kind of walk us into what has attracted you to this industry and this ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk at length about my career and how I was in the wrong place, maybe in the wrong career. Just to give you a bit of background, I spent 14 years in the UK in banking and finance. I'm a maths numbers guy, but at heart, I'm a person, a people person, sorry. And I've always wanted to be involved in startups. I launched my own startup back in the UK in 2015, which was a group dating app, which I still believe is a great idea. But we raised money, we took it to market, we had downloads, and we failed. And I went through the highs and lows of being a founder and got the bug for it. I just couldn't get that opportunity to move into the startup world. we moved across here, my fiance and I, and this opportunity came about, and I jumped at it. I love working with startups. I love helping, whether it's advising and just, giving my 2 cents on being here and what they can do and what they can't do. We'll come on to it, but meeting so many amazing people at events and just talking and listening to what their story is great.
So let's back up for a second, because I think there's a higher degree of insight in the failures than there is the wins. It's usually a great team that builds the success, and then you talk to one of them, they're kind of siloed. But when you fail and you're the leader of that company, you kind of see a bigger picture. You do an autopsy of that experience. And so for our listeners who are looking to start a small business or do a startup or even rebuild their lives, right? Because you had to go through that. What was some of the biggest challenges as you were looking to develop this startup that you think contributed to the downturn? Like, what are some of those insights?
Yeah, just to pick up on what it is to be a founder, and just to delve into that one minute before we delve into what the pitfalls are. We created this, and it was myself and my best friend back home. I lived with him at the time. Still best friends. We've had a lot of fallings out over the years, and a lot of them during our startup career. But you have to find a gap in the market, and you have to see what you can do to solve that. And that is what all startups are about, really. That you find something that's wrong or something that's inefficient, and you're trying to make it better. Taking a company live and to market is a great accomplishment. Raising money is a great accomplishment. My kind of lessons learned almost are find an amazing co-founder if you go into, preferably not your best friend. And investment wise, we raised a significant 6-figure amount back in the UK. They were all from kind of angels and family friends or friends. That then brought its own amount of stress, because they were demanding you to get to the next stage quicker than you could actually do it. And we went to market with our app, and we had amazing downloads and a lot of matches. But then we changed iterations in the back end, and that caused us to then almost 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because of the pressure of our friends who are investors. So one word of advice is choose your co-founder carefully, and make sure you align. You don't have to be the same kind of character. Opposites do attract in that sense, but have the same vision and the same objective. And then investment wise, don't necessarily rush into investment. If you can do it bootstrapped, great. If you can find investment, also great. But you don't have to sell your soul to VCs or investors. Just see what's right and kind of take your time. That's my advice.
So I want to drop in on something you said, that there was pressure to pivot, to expand, to do something. What was that pressure, and how was that process managed that ultimately kind of turned the company?
Yeah, so just to kind of answer that, let me just describe what the idea was. We had a group dating app, and you would be out with your friends, and you would take a group selfie. You would match with other groups in your area that you might never cross, and you would chat on the app, and you would arrange and meet there and then. So you have 4 friends. You meet with, well, for me it was four girls, and we'd go safety in numbers. You weren't necessarily going for an attraction. Anyway, the reason why we then stumbled was because some of the investors said, okay, well, why aren't we seeing enough matches? Why aren't we seeing more people on the app? Why can't they integrate a bar and generate referral fees off that? And we kind of panicked and thought, okay, that's a great idea. We'd love to monetize the app, but we've literally just gone live. Why are we even listening to investors in that sense? We had this vision, we had this app idea, and we wanted to get it to a point where it was MVP and all these buzzwords. We didn't. We were first-time founders, and we stumbled across all these obstacles that came our way, and it ultimately led to its downfall. And no regrets about it, but lesson learned. If I was to do another startup, I would do a lot of things differently. Trying to keep things.
James, I feel like every listener right now that's a founder it's resonating with them. Sounds like a kind of common pressure that's felt. I'm really interested. How has that really carried into your role today with Startup Grind? These lessons.
Yeah, so I wear a number of different hats at Startup Grind, which is great. I love it. I love the buzz. I love meeting, everybody from different aspects of the startup world, whether it's founders, whether it's investors. partners that we work with at Startup Grind, anybody that comes to an event. I'm sure we can come on to that, but we had a great event last week, and just meeting different people from different walks of life. Silicon Valley, and maybe we'll come on to this as well, but it's a different place. It's unreal. It's surreal as a place. You know, I love just listening to everybody's stories. Everybody's so helpful here. Everyone's really eager to help each other. Even if you know there's no similarities, there's no relevance to them talking. You know, overhearing people at events say, "Oh, I live in Redwood City. Oh, so do I. Let's go home and meet for coffee." You know, certain things like that you just are so natural. And I'm not selling Silicon Valley here to everyone, but you know, it's a unique place, and I feel like I can try and fit into that given my history.
So Lisa, I gotta admit, I mean, I'm fascinated by the way James has done that. There's a lot of people who come overseas, and it's kind of like you've got two things going, James. I want you to kind of give me some high level insights on how you've done this. You pivoted from the startup immediately, landed in a place that allows you to cultivate your skills and your passions in this particular area. But landing in Silicon Valley, getting the role with Startup Grind to expand that ecosystem, to really engaged, you've done it at a breakneck speed. When you landed here, what were some of your strategies in order to scale this community? And how have you done that so well? Because what you've done translates to go-to-market strategies for any company. So you've got some really innate skills. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've not had a chance to sit back and digest that, but everything you just said is very true. And you know, not that I've thought about this and what was the reason, but I do point it back to my first in-person event that I went to. So I moved over here in middle of October last year, right into a new role. I work for a company who is built an amazing community of founders and events around the world over the last 14 years. I'm very new. I've come from a corporate banking background, but I do have some skills that, you know, and personality that lets me just express myself. I'm quite a positive person. I love meeting new people. I worked in internal audit before I moved over here, so maybe I'm catching up on my kind of interpersonal interactions. But what I've definitely realized, so on the 26th of January this year was my first in-person event that I went to, an event held at Tesla, one of the Tesla showcase rooms in San Francisco. And I went there on my own, very nervous, I guess. And it was a startup event. We spent the whole day stood up, and I just met so many founders. Since that day, I've then gone to 32 other events since the end of January. So I've put myself out there. I love meeting new people. You know, the team that I'm in within Startup Grind, we're all remote. There's only 10 of us in our kind of HQ team. And me and the founder, Derek Anderson, are the only ones on the ground in Silicon Valley. So I go to a lot of events, not to kind of spread the word, but you know, just to be a face and to listen to founders and meet amazing people and invite them to what we do and invite them to the community. We've got an amazing conference coming up in less than 2 weeks, just to tell them about that and say, you know what, we're here to help. We're here to allow you to, you know, meet potentially, you know, amazing people, whether they're going to join your team or they're going to invest in you. So that's definitely my takeaway is in-person events, you know, post-COVID and whatnot. I don't know how it was immediately after COVID in Silicon Valley, but you know, being in person, I think, is the one takeaway that I think is huge.
So Lisa, last week we were talking to Bill and Megan, and they were saying something similar to this. It's you know, these extroverts, they go to these events and they seem like they have it together. James got the personality, he's got the cool voice. You there's things,
well, if you can understand me.
But what I'm realizing is there's a common denominator just beneath the surface is that he comes over, and Bill and Megan were talking about this last week, and he is vulnerable. You put yourself out there. So there's this vulnerability to being a founder, to throw yourself outside of your comfort zone and just to learn, to engage, to invite, to help. And that's what I'm hearing. Do those qualities resonate in terms of what you're doing in terms of throwing yourself in all these events?
Yeah, it's scary when you put it like that.
It is scary.
Yeah, I'm starting to sweat now that you're saying that for all the events that I go to. No, it is. And I have different tactics at different events. Sometimes, you know, if it's in a juice bar, I kind of go in, I assess the landscape. I then make a beeline to the coffee bar to order a coffee and then just compose myself. And then as soon as you had that first interaction of, hey, I'm James, and you know, most events that you go to these days have a name tag and you can put whatever you want on there. So I put James, Startup Grind. You know, people have either heard of Startup Grind, which is great, or they haven't. And it works both ways, right? So if they have, then it's, you know, common ground. You can talk about it. You can say what you do. You can give them insight if they don't, you know, if they aren't coming to the next event. But if they don't know about Startup Grind, it's a great way for me to kind of almost learn my pitch. And it's not even a pitch. It's just learn how I can describe what Startup Grind is to someone who doesn't know and how it can benefit them. You know, we're not in the business of selling to startups. We're in the business of helping startups. If it's education or it's networking or it's, you know, introductions to fundraising, that's the way I go about things. Yes, it is daunting, but you know, put yourself out there. What's the worst that can happen? Someone says, no, I don't want to speak to you, which has never happened because, as I say, Silicon Valley is full of friendly people.
Let's pivot to that a little bit more about Startup Grind and why these global ecosystems are so helpful. Now, you've provided insight to your business experience. You provided insight into how you've landed here and build your personal brand around your name, Startup Grind. Talk a little bit now about this ecosystem of Startup Grind. You talked about there's education, there's funding, there's access. Give us kind of the high level insights of these various aspects of Startup Grind and why founders need them so much. I mean, besides the obvious.
Yeah, so let me just take you back to how it all started because Derek Anderson, as I say, is our CEO and founder. 14 years ago, he got in a room with some friends. He wanted to be an entrepreneur. He wanted to be a startup founder, but didn't know how to go about it, and kind of got into a room like we are now and talked about, you know, how to do that. And then they invited somebody from kind of LA for the next meeting, and he said, "Oh, this is great. I'd love to take this to LA." And then that kind of spun out to, you know, we're active in over 300 cities around the world now, over 100 countries. And, you know, from people that are hosting events for startups that, you know, aren't directly involved in Startup Grind, that they represent us as a chapter director, and they just love being integrated within that local ecosystem because they're providing amazing content and events for startups, whether it's pitch competitions, you know, fireside chats with investors, VC panels. Founders want to go to those things because they want to learn, and they want to learn off the best people. You know, if you bring in a CEO of an amazing tech company, that will generate a lot of attraction. I think the first one Derek did a fireside chat with the CEO of Pinterest, and that just created an amazing buzz, and media came, and that kind of started everything off. So, you know, I held an event in San Francisco last Wednesday. We had over 200 attendees, female founders night. We had 10 amazing female pitchers. One of them sat next to me. And we had 4 amazing panelists, and we just held an event for women. You know, talked about everything that it is to be a woman in Silicon Valley, how to get help, how to work with corporates, how to, you know, pitch to investors, how to raise VC money as a woman, and it was just great. And the feedback that I got, you know, as a man hosting that event, you know, I stayed very clear. I did the check-ins, and I just, you know, received a lot of great feedback after that this community and what it represents is so valuable, and it's just great that we can do that all around the world. I went to, sorry, just to digress a little bit, I went to again, part of the network effect. I was invited to a private dinner in Chinatown in San Francisco a few weeks ago. It was actually on my birthday, so I spent my birthday with 10 random people that I'd never met before, and there was a woman at the table who said, "Oh, Startup Grind, I actually went to an event there in Moldova." And I said, "Moldova?" You know, I didn't even realize that we had a chapter there. So it touches all corners of the world. And yeah, we look just to give back, and we're all about the community.
So talk a little more. So we're going to meet Capella in a minute, and she was at that event, which was amazing. Lisa, next time they have another one.
Yeah, Brian called me. It was like, I got to tell you about this event. You know, we coach a lot of female founders, and so amazing that you're giving them that platform and that, you know, kind of organizing that community for them to really kind of share their stories and show up that way.
Yeah, phenomenal. So talk a little bit about a little bit more of the services that Startup Grind provide, and you talk about the genesis of, you know, events and giving startups and founders a voice. How has that evolved? What are the most important resources that, other than funding, that founders are looking for?
Yeah, so I mean, we run out of the HQ team a lot of different events during the year. They're kind of our flagship events that we run. So we have our global conference in Silicon Valley, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. We hold that every year in Redwood City. We have over 4,000 attendees. We have 150 exhibiting startups. So that's a great opportunity for some of our startups to apply and exhibit in front of a huge audience of investors, of partners. And it allows them to pitch and showcase what they do if they're looking to raise, or if they're looking to just build out their MVP or whatever it is. That we host these events, and we see a lot of success stories from that. So whether they've raised at their exhibition booth at the event, or it takes them, we had a company last year that exhibited. They met with an investor that we set up at the conference. 11 months later, they raised $18 million with them. So it's, not every startup does that, but someone might do. So it's a great opportunity to come to these live events, and the one in a couple of weeks, bringing together investors and startups in the heart of Silicon Valley. And it's very cliche because I've never actually been to the conference, and I'm not promoting it, but I work on the partnerships team, so I like to attract and bring in new potential sponsors and partners that have a vested interest in those startups themselves. But for me, it's just a vision, and you can kind of imagine it even if you haven't been to it. 4,000 people, they close the street in downtown Redwood City, and everybody's just mingling, so that it's not just a smaller event where we had 200 people last week all getting on and meeting someone. If you go away and you meet one LinkedIn connection from that event, it's a positive. But if you meet 10, then it's great. So add that and times that by 100 people, it's amazing.
I love it. So what I've learned being in Silicon Valley and working with startups is it's the best product doesn't always win. And it's all about positioning. It's all about communicating. It's all about connecting. It's all about access to resources. Again, a lot of brilliant technical founders have a great idea, but unless they can get outside that silo and start pulling in these new resources, being vulnerable, coming to events like Startup Grind, going to other events that Silicon Valley Impact may be hosting. So it's this community effect. Talk a little bit more. You said something earlier about the network effect. Mm. Tell our listeners a little bit what that means and why that's so important.
Well, I don't actually know if it is a term, but it is to me because it's funny. I moved here, and as I say, I spent 14 years in banking and finance in the UK. I never used LinkedIn, right? And I came over here, and LinkedIn Sales Nav is now my Bible, because I spend all day, every day on it. Whether it's meeting founders or it's researching new companies that are in the startup world that I never heard of. But I think the network effect is really prevalent here, because I've met certain individuals that are just really helpful. They're almost mentors to me. They've opened doors. They've invited me on radio shows, and allow me to speak at different events. Last week I was speaking at an event, just before Peter Walker of Carter, and I've kind of sat there pinching myself, thinking, what on earth am I doing? I mean, six months ago I was auditing a trading desk, and now I'm on stage in front of 100 VCs talking about community and startups. So I just think I'm very much a yes person, and I think the yes person aspect and psychology goes hand in hand with the network effect, because the network effect means that you can just grow your network. And as I say, people in Silicon Valley are really keen to help in any way, right? Whether it's just inviting you to different events, introducing you to people, whatever it is. There's everyone's just so good.
Okay. So let's do this. I love that. So Capella, I want to kind of bring you into this conversation. I know we had this all planned out. Lisa, like, oh, we're going to move. We'll pivot to Capella. She'll give her intro. But let's just throw the scripts out the window like we usually do. Capella, you were the winner of that ladies' night, the Founders Ladies' Night, which was amazing. I mean, the energy was just, it was a buzz, right? It was a great event. Fun. It was a fun. So tell me, let's start with your experience with what James is talking about, building network, building community. You and I were talking yesterday before the show. In fact, you had your whole team out doing volunteer work. So this has been a really important topic to you. Talk a little bit about, well, first let's do this. Let me back up with my mad scientist mentality.
I'm
here.
so excited. I love this. Like, once again,
Yeah, it's a head fake.
Yeah.
Give a little intro about you and your company, and then we'll come back to
Okay,
the
then your
community.
question?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me on the show. So lovely to meet you as well, Lisa. Did not have the chance to meet you the other evening, but you really got to come out to
Yeah,
California and come join the
absolutely.
females out here. So I'm Capella Kerst. I'm the founder and CEO of geCKo Materials. We're a bio-inspired dry adhesive company. I was very blessed to be able to spin out my research that I patented at Stanford and started a company about 3 years ago. geCKo Materials is not a suction, not vacuum, not tape, not glue. That's normally traditionally how you attach and affix two objects, tape, glue, or suction. geCKo Materials is none of those. I actually have a little demo that if you're just listening, you can't see the video. What I'm taking is geCKo Materials, and I have this can, and I'm placing it down, and I'm picking it up with my pinky. I normally have a wine
It almost looks
bottle.
like latex, like a strip of latex.
that I'm just laying down, and then if I
Well,
turn
and I
it
want to
over-
point out to the listening audience that this is a full soda can, not just a
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
but it's full of liquid.
full.
It's a
There's-
12-ounce
there's a
full
Yeti
soda
bottle. Can I
can.
borrow your
Yeah,
Yeti?
go for it. Yeah.
Can I drink that later?
So this Yeti is actually pretty heavy, so we'll see if it works. But normally I can do it with a full bottle of wine too. I just,
No pressure. You're on a radio. We'll tell
So,
them what you want.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
it's hanging.
It's
It's
hanging.
hanging.
Dang it, it's
and
working.
then it falls off under its own weight when I dump it over. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Nice.
So
Yay. Applause. We have the applause button.
yeah, thank you. No, so geCKo Materials, you can reuse it 120,000 times. You can attach and detach it.
There it is.
I love it. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just a little late on that.
No
Comedic
worries.
timing is.
I love it. You have a shear strength of 120 kilopascals of shear strength, so that's equivalent to my pinky picking up that heavy Yeti bottle, and it was full too, or the soda can or wine bottle, or 1-inch tile supporting 15 pounds vertically. You can use it in any barometric environments. You can use it here on Earth as well as in deep space. We're currently on the International Space Station. Some of our commercial space companies have a satellite launch with geCKo Materials on the end effectors that's going up in a couple of months that we're extremely excited about. So you can use us here on Earth as well as in vacuum. We help the semiconductor industries pick and place robots, as well as the automotive companies save energy, time, and money. So it's extremely exciting. There's no force needed to attach nor detach. What other properties am I blanking on right now? No, I think I covered it all.
No,
Yeah,
that's
that applause
great.
really. Sorry.
I know it's just, the crowd in here is just overwhelming. Thank you. You all need to all right, calm down, everybody. All right. So you came up with this idea while a student at Stanford, or you were a professor? What was your capacity there? And then once you kind of came up with this product, where did you see the product market fit?
So this was actually a PhD project. I can't take all the credit. It was started, biomimicry was started in my lab between a Berkeley and Stanford collaboration.
Oh, how did that play? Okay, that's another.
That's another story, another episode. I don't think we have enough time for that. But I was very blessed to have Mark Kokoski as my PhD advisor. So about 15 years of R&D research mimicking the gecko's ability to climb up smooth vertical surfaces. I came in during Generation 4, helping with some of the geometry and techniques, and then I helped actually, and I invented the mass production of geCKo Materials. So it took about 48 hours to make one sheet, or like this sheet is about 11 square inches. And in my PhD, I was able to produce something that was sustainable, mass production capabilities, as well as just like having a company that you could actually scale. So obviously making one in 48 hours is not scalable. So I then invented a way to make a metal mold, and that can actually be turned out in 10 minutes. So after I invented the metal mold, patented it, worked with Stanford OTL. That's a fun process. But no, the patent lawyers are great. It was actually it was pretty fun. I spun out my company after I defended and graduated. So
Oh, nice.
yeah.
So product market fit.
Yes.
You've developed a cool material here, and other than James and I taking on this material and trying to climb a wall like a gecko later,
you
what
can be Spider-Man.
where have you found the most use and application for this particular product?
Pick and place robots, semiconductors, as well as space. So making space more sustainable. So ISAM is in space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. And we need to make space sustainable and green. We can't just throw things up like some, people have been throwing even cars up in space. We all know that. We need to make this more sustainable. We can't, start off space building in a non-sustainable manner. So we're pretty much the only material that is ultra strong in space, as well as highly reusable. There is no comparison. It is truly disruptible. The next industrial space Velcro. For here on Earth, for pick and place robots as well as semiconductors, you can have the robot arms go in any barometric environment. So a nitrogen box, hydrogen box, or vacuum environment using the same end effector. So again, you're saving energy, time, and money. Since there is no suction needed, you are eliminating airlines as well as vacuum pumps for the pick and place robots. So when you're picking up, say, a windshield or a solar panel, you have to pull a vacuum that can requires a high amount of electricity and energy consumption. You can actually do away with that since we're a total passive system. As you saw, I just placed the geCKo materials down, picked it up, and then it just comes off.
So who would be your target market? I mean, are you selling this in rolls in hardware stores, or is this
one day we will be? Yeah.
Or are you targeting large enterprises, partnering with NASA, things? Where are you going with this?
Yes, we work with Honda, Ford, Toyota, GE. We just started a project with them. Very excited. We've done 2 Air Force and Space Force. Yes, the Space Force does exist. We work with them on ISAM, which is extremely fun, and it's just really exciting to see what's going to come out. And I can't wait until those papers are published publicly.
So this is really interesting. Just kind of give a timeline compression here. Yeah. There was iterations of this where you kind of came in at a certain phase.
Yes.
You then scaled this into a company, and now you're in the process of really taking this to the market. Yep. What has been so? Back to the original question about community, but before you get to community, what have been some of your challenges bringing this great idea to market? Because coming out of Stanford, coming out of some of these great universities, there are really innovative ideas, but it's like another level to come out of academia and go into business. What have been some of your hurdles, and then ultimately transition into that community thing that I love talking about?
Yes, thank you so much. So one of the big challenges is being such a disruptible tech, like you are creating a new market, is education. You have to educate people on how to use it. It is one of my fun joys of being a founder is showing someone who has never seen geCKo materials and handing them something heavy, handing them the adhesive, and like having them pick it up and then having it fall off. Everybody without fail, their eyes open, and it's like they are transported back to their 5-year-old self. And it is like a pure joy to see that. And people are just like, how, why? And they just want to know like the technology behind it. And it's a Van der Waals force, so spoiler alert. But it's so exciting to see that. But having that education, and then after the education piece has gone in with the R&D engineers at the company, we then transition to, okay, now let's take this from the R&D engineers to the pilots to the commercial sales. So that's what we're doing right now, and we're really been very blessed to talk to a lot of really cool customers. We have a lot of really fun customers that are willing to take this to the next level. Like Intel is building a facility here in the US, so that's going to be great opportunities for us to fly over, help them really get on that foundational floor, and then bring that up to mass scaling production for them and other facilities. So it's more of the education pieces, bringing those R&D kind of, you see this is with like tape and like a string, right? You're not going to have that on an industrial robot. You have to bring that to the proper infrastructure. And so that piece is been a little bit more challenging.
So clearly you're passionate about this.
So passionate.
I mean, you love it. You've been smiling the whole time, nonstop. Of like, I haven't stopped smiling because you're smiling so much. So I love this. And I can't agree with you more. Like, educating the market on what you do is a big hurdle. I'm sure that our listeners, however, are thinking, well, that's great. I'd love to educate my market on what we're doing. But getting in the door, how have you got in the door so effectively over this? I mean, it doesn't hurt that you're coming out of Stanford and having that community behind you. Definitely. But I mean, whatever community you have behind you, whether you have Startup Grind or you have Silicon Valley Impact, or you just have Lisa Helfrich got your back. What has been some of your strategies getting in the door that our listeners could kind of like tap in and go, oh yeah, okay, I can do that?
That's a great question. Yes, I recognize I'm very blessed coming out of Stanford University, and I got a lot of media attention during my PhD, so that also helped. So people had a small amount of education coming into it. But another thing is, like James says, kind of just putting yourself out there and going to a lot of networking events. Like, I knew I wanted to start a company from a very young age, so I started networking and just going to events, meeting other founders, other future founders, at a very, very young age. And then in undergrad, I became part of an entrepreneurship organization where, again, there's more networking and just continually putting myself out there and also helping other founders going through their journey. So I specialized in whole life cycle sustainability and mass production manufacturing. So anytime there was a another company that was like, oh, I want to take my, prototype to mass production. I was like, can I help you with that? And I would get to like come alongside them and like help them from a technical point of view because I'm a very technical founder. So I got to experience a lot of startup life through other founders. And then not to say that was, eye-opening enough, but when I started my own company, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what they're going through. Like I was a piece and a component, and it was just like, it's such a different transition. So like networking is great, talking to other people, even coming alongside other founders and like doing some consulting work and things, and like offering your services to help others. But what I really found is like going through it is the most learning. So like, even though I'd helped other people and I'd gone alongside them, starting your own is just like such a different experience.
So just to connect the dots, and then Lisa, I'll look to you after I ask this question because I can see
Yeah,
you
fair question,
leaning
Yeah.
forward. I want to show the connection between James and Capella, where James did the same thing, where the company didn't really kind of reach the expectations, and you threw yourself behind another community, and you're in that process now learning. You did the same thing at some point in order to learn and bring that information back to your journey. Is that what I'm hearing? Is there a parallel there between you two?
Yes, I definitely think so. Just having that where you're just putting yourself out there, helping others, saying yes to opportunities. Like there's so many things. Some of my friends are like, you don't have to say yes to everything. And it's like, but like the opportunities, like I was invited to Vietnam to meet the prime minister. Like it was such a cool opportunity. And there I met somebody else at a bar randomly, and then was able to join another really cool event. And it's just like these random little instances that you like, if you say yes to this, then it opens this door. Not to say that if you say no to something, then like the FOMO, like don't let FOMO set in, because like that's not healthy and good. But like be willing and fun to like go out and say yes. Like there have definitely been things that I've said yes to that I'm like, okay, it wasn't as fun
Let's
as
just
like,
see what happens.
yeah. But as long as like you're having joy and you're like bringing yourself to the event, and just as a person, not as a company or with an alternative motive, just like being there. How can I help others? That's, I think, the best
I love
way.
that. And we're going to come back to that. I'm going to look to you, Lisa, to ask your question, but I definitely want to come back to Capella and the way that her team is building community to move the company forward. But Lisa, jump in on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just love your energy and passion, not only around, your product and your business, but just this community. I'm curious, now that you've had lots of successful traction, what is something you've really learned about yourself that our other entrepreneurial listeners, might resonate with them?
Something I've learned about, this is a great question. Thank you so much for asking. Something I've learned about myself throughout this is how much passion and joy gets you through the hard times. Like, as I can sit here and say, oh, we like sold and shipped product every week in 2023. It was amazing. There were still hard days in 2023. Like there were high moments and low moments. But what I've learned about myself is because I'm doing something passionate that I love and like truly like feel such a deep down joy and like purpose for what I'm doing, it helps me get through the low days. And it helps me like, okay, it's not that bad. Like things get better, and like gives me that momentum to just like grind away.
That's a great question, Lisa. So we got a couple more minutes with Capella. So Capella, tell us about this volunteer work that you do, and kind of give us a high level understanding of why it's important to bring your team together like this. And can you do it in like 60 seconds?
Yes, I'll try. So geCKo Materials, when I founded the company, I was very passionate about us being a PBC, so a public benefit corp, because I wanted to, help the community, help the employees of our customers that we're selling into, and, not just be like all about the bottom line, how much profit can we take? I really want it to be the change that I want to see in the world. And it has to start with me. Like there's so many things that I see that I'm like, man, that company could be making such an impact. It's like, no, okay, my company could be making an impact. So part of our mission statement is for everybody, CEO, myself, down to janitorial staff, is given a full paid day off every once a month. So one day for every month, we all go out into the community and give back. We give back into a voluntary. There's no money that we get. We aren't like co-sponsors with anything. We just, as employees, as individuals, we all go into different aspects. So that can be like an all-day science fair judging competition, or building habitats for humanity, building homes for the homeless, food bank, some sustainability efforts that they need extra pairs of hands with. And so we go out into the community and really give back. And I feel very passionate about that, because at the end of the day, you can have a project that you're working on that has like a 5, 6, 18-month lead time, but then, you keep going every day. But at the end of this volunteering day, you actually something that you've accomplished.
I love that. So Capella, thank you for those insights of being a startup. We're going to rotate chairs in a minute, and we're going to bring in Joe. So just give us a second, and we'll be back in one moment.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're off. Right now we're off recording.
1 second, please.
All right, here we go. Joe, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We still have James with us. Capella, thank you so much. You're still in the studio. We can see you. In fact, we can see you alongside Brian over there. You want to give that little...
You can see. Are you talking to me?
Yeah, Brian.
Hey, everybody. Brian over here behind the board. Oh, and I've got Lisa here now sitting in studio.
Yep.
Capella,
Cheers.
Lisa. Capella, Lisa. Brian's superpower is much like
I
mine.
got Lisa actually over here on
In
the
my
screen.
snowy
Can you see
studio,
her there?
in
Yeah.
Canada.
All right.
Capella too. Anyway, back to you.
Okay, so all the all-stars are still in the house, but Joe, welcome to the show. Give a little quick introduction of who you are, and then we're going to get into the origin story. So this section of the show is about local. We've been talking global startups. We've been talking with James about Startup Grind. This part of the show, we look for companies from San Jose, Los Gatos, Campbell, to help those who are small businesses get insights and to see that a lot of this stuff that we're talking about applies across the board. So Joe, quick intro, who you are, what you do.
So Joe Pambianco, I'm with the Pambianco Group, and that's me in a roll of quarters. No, but I specialize in high-performing teams work. So making great teams on purpose, because they're unnecessarily rare. And in terms of the origin story, I had the good fortune to be at one of the tech giants for a number of years. And I was ringside in leadership development when they said, we want to conduct an experiment. The research is clear. Performance is differentiated on great teams. Great teams have similar characteristics, and they're rare.
And we saw that with Capella earlier. So unpack that a little bit. What did you learn in-house, and then pivot, because life took a turn for you, and you had to then kind of figure out your own way without the safety net of the enterprise company underneath you.
Yeah.
What did that look like? What did you learn from your time with the company, and then where are you now? Give us that journey.
Yeah. So the cool thing is we got to iterate. Great teams have high trust. They focus on each other's strengths. They have a clear and compelling mission. And some of these things that aren't obvious to us, but they're easier said than done. So helping leaders to get good at creating that on purpose, and not be leaders of humans and not just leaders of execution. And that's one of the things I love about Capella's interview is clearly she's a leader of humans, and not just a leader of creating this great material.
So you're now essentially a coach, an advisor in the world of a very saturated market. But you have that unique experience working with the company, and again, taking that experience into the market on your own. Give us kind of the 3 things that you learned while working within the organization that you took with you, but then the challenges, because again, advisors and coaches in this space is a saturated market. How have you found the capacity to stand out? Have you found the capacity to stand out, and what has been the struggle?
Yeah. So one of the key things I learned was don't start with expertise. Start with curiosity. Go and discover the client leader. They'll frequently ask me, "Hey, what are you you're going to be doing offsite for a day and a half, and we're going to be together for 3-4 days. What are you going to do?" The answer is, I got a whole quiver full of arrows here, but what are you guys trying to get done right now?
Now you're talking from this perspective. You're the coach, and you're talking with the organization that's hired you and looking to beef up their team engagement. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of saying, "Here's my solution," it starts with, what are they trying to get done? How's it going? What are the team dynamics like? And build from there. And customize. it's not cookie cutter. It's not training. It's an experience the team's going to have with each other. It's helping them have the best conversation they can possibly have. And by the way, it better be a home run, because if they forget about it 2 weeks from now, it was a zero impact.
Yeah, James, look at you right now and going, where were you when we were making those decisions back in the day that could have made the difference? So, Joe, again, when you're working within the company, the larger company,
Yeah.
what did you learn? And then you had to leave that. Give us that story. You had to leave. What was that experience like? And then you said, I'm going to do this on my own.
Yeah. Does anyone remember March 2020? Yeah.
Yep.
No, what happened?
But there was a pandemic, Brian. Yeah. So I loved getting together in person with teams. And they decided, hey, we can also do this virtually. We'd already pioneered that, and we could have impact. But I did not love only doing long virtual sessions. And at that time, this tech giant wasn't sure what was going to happen with the economy. So they looked around, they said, hey, people with tenure, we're going to give you a giant check if you want to go away. And I left a team I loved and worked I loved, except not all total virtual, and decided to see what it would be like out in the world doing this work.
And so now here you are, unemployed, got a little package, got a little wiggle room, and you're going to decide to do what you did with the company, but now on your own. What were some of your struggles starting the small business? And was it just you, or did you turn to a buddy and say, let's do this together? Or were you the solopreneur? You're by yourself?
Yeah, it was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that journey like?
Well, first of all, it was cool to have a trial retirement for a few months. I actually rode electric mountain bikes with Brian Bernasconi for a few months, and it was one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah, you told me all about that the other day. I'm jealous. Go ahead.
But you know, there was a good problem I had when I was at this company. I keep trying not to name it, and that was frequently I would get asked, "Hey, could you do this for this person I know outside? Could you do this for this startup? Could you do this for?" So there was already pull, and so that was a plus. There was also a big network of people who thought of me as the executive whisperer, as the team whisperer. So there was some built-in credibility in a network. At first, that really sustained me well. And in fact, one of those, tomorrow, I'm going to be at that company with a team who knew me from 4 years ago and said, Joe, come on back. So that has been helpful. I need to develop the skills to be known beyond my network and to expand my network.
So you definitely have a skill set. You have your superpower, but in order to succeed as a small business, you're saying you've got to learn new things. You got to be vulnerable. You've got to lean into those difficult things that you didn't do before and possibly was done by somebody else in a big corporation that small businesses don't see in the beginning. How have you kind of handled that? And is there a question of, is this sustainable and can I continue to do this?
It's a living question. Yeah.
It's a living question. That's a good way of putting it.
I will say that there are parts of wearing all these hats I don't love. And I'm having to learn, when do I need to just tough it out? When do I need to hire somebody who's an expert at this and bite the bullet? I really appreciated my neighbor James here mentioning that he was late to LinkedIn. Like I
was going to say you could hire him as your sales guy.
I viewed it as a luxury when I was at this major corporation with a lot of tenure, and it looked like I had runway, and I did. Maybe I don't have to do all of that much, and I had to hustle to get up to speed on it. And I have a lot more. Like my LinkedIn profile. There's more I can do with LinkedIn, and I need to do it. And there's more. Like tomorrow, day after tomorrow, I'm going to be at Uplift by BetterUp. Right? So I'm going to be networking. I'm getting myself out the door in 2 more of these events.
I liked it. So what I'm hearing is a comment, and I'm going to look to you, James. I know you got something. Is I'm hearing that small business entrepreneurs, startups are going to have to be in a constant state of learning and leaning into those soft spots. James, I know you had something on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, I was just going to say about LinkedIn. And this is not to promote myself or my profile, because I'm not doing that at all. I've, as I said, I moved over here, never used LinkedIn before. I'm now doing this countdown, which I committed to way too early, to our global conference, and I started 38 days out, and I do an update every day. And some days it's very hard to think of something to write about, but when you're 2 weeks into committing to something that's 38 days countdown, you have to kind of think about stuff. And the amount of kind of feedback I've got, and it's very hard to kind of digest and measure how successful that is to build out your network. But I've gone from being a guy that sends a lot of invitations out to people to now a guy who receives a lot of invitations from people I've never met or never would cross paths with. So it's, you know, I think just putting yourself out there, and Capella mentioned it as well, is a great way just to, you know, visualize you as a person online that people can connect with. And, you know, you don't have to sell what you do specifically, but it just builds out that network naturally and organically, I think.
So I'm gonna say this. So we're gonna have to, for the sake of time, Joe, we're definitely gonna have you back. And I'm hearing, again, leaning into these soft spots, but we're going to rotate chairs. I'm going to have you sit over there. I'm going to bring in Greg. He's going to give an interesting perspective, but we'll be back in a second.
Hey,
About 5
Brian,
minutes left.
before we let Joe go, can he do is he allowed to do a shameless promotion here, self-promotion? Can he, we haven't even heard his last name. If people want to get in touch with him on LinkedIn? Yeah,
we definitely want to build out your LinkedIn. That's a good segue by James. What can we see in the next week on LinkedIn from you, Joe?
Well, hopefully you'll see a link to this for one thing.
You will,
yeah,
definitely.
But and I will say, I'm Joe Pambianco, and if anyone here is thinking of getting their team together and wants to have an offsite that blows doors, that's my specialty.
Yeah, everyone's got their superpowers. We definitely want to promote superpowers. Lisa, what do you got?
I was just going to say, Brian, we're going to have Joe back on, because I just think about the, team effectiveness, all of the, dynamics that happen, for most people on LinkedIn that they're experiencing. I'm sure Joe has a lot of insight into. So
all right, Joe Pambianco, everybody. He's got the small business, the team whisperer. You can find him on LinkedIn with his beefed up LinkedIn in the next week or so. All right, thanks, Joe. We're going to rotate you over, and we're going to bring in Greg.
Go.
All right. Well, Joe, you've rotated over, and we have made space for Greg Manly. Greg, welcome to the show. You've had a chance to listen to a lot of great insights. I mean, I loved having James here and Capella. Joe, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what brings you here, because you got a unique story, and we have I know I keep interrupting. I say I'm going to pass the mic, and then I don't. I take it right back. But we have a unique segment of the show where we bring in an individual who is going through something, and the goal is to make sure that our listeners who are dealing with the same things don't feel alone. And so, Greg, you're my volunteer executive director this week. Introduce yourself to our millions and millions of fans.
First off, thank you for having me. James and Capella, before I start off, you guys took about 95% of my talking points. James, I started what I was doing for the last 7 years ago, and that was exactly it. I came in completely blind into what I was doing, but I wound up just going to events, and just became part of the ecosystem. So I think what you're doing is exactly has a similar aspect for me. So my name's Greg Manly. I've been in sales my whole life. I started my career out in sports, especially here in San Jose, starting the San Jose Barracuda minor league hockey team.
Nice.
And then I wound up working in software. And during my time, I wound up meeting a founder for an outsourced finance and accounting firm, and wound up running sales and building out the Silicon Valley ecosystem for them. I did that for about 3 years before moving out to Boston to start that ecosystem as the medtech world boomed. And during that was March 2020. Nothing happened particular in that time, but wound up building out that sort of similar ecosystem. And then as the world kind of reopened back up here in San Francisco, came back here to rebuild the partnerships aspect for that accounting firm.
Nice. So you definitely have a great deal of experience building out the ecosystem, great deal of experience in sales. I saw the big smile across Lisa's face when you said hockey, because she's from Calgary in Canada. And of course, you're going to be kicked out of the country if you don't play hockey. So essentially, huge track record. However, there's been a turn lately. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So this past January, I was informed that my position was going to be dissolved, and that I was no longer needed at the company I was giving 7 years for. And so now I am a free agent in hockey terms, and being able to, figure out that next step. So I've been working through not just sort of personal growth and sort of personal reflection. Did I complete and accomplish what I wanted to do? is there more to be had? And the answer completely is yes. There is, a bit of failures of like, it's not the household name that I wanted it to be, but before I left. But there's, more aspects to be out there and, kind of get back into the community.
I love your heart. You're still concerned about the company that let you go. I mean, that wasn't lost on me right there, where it's not like those they let me go, but no, it's concern.
It's about. I think you put your heart and soul into it, so it's completely heartbreaking. And so people get divorced all the time, and they still make sure that their ex is, okay. There's some definitely animosity in there, but but for the most part, the idea is, I hope for the best for you guys, and I'm gonna try and do the same thing as I get myself back on my feet.
Yeah, it sounds like it's still really close to you, and a lot of people in tech in Silicon Valley are going through this right now, and all these emotions, whether it be the anger, the sadness, the heartbreak, it comes in waves. What has been kind of your process in absorbing this, and just an observer seeing? I mean, Silicon Valley is a small world. I've seen Greg show up at events just to volunteer, to hand out things, to be involved, and so that's another thing that. How you and I got connected. You and I got connected when you were still employed, but then I saw you just recently still involved in the community. And so what have you done to really kind of deal with this transition?
Well, the first thing that really kind of came up was that ecosystem of partners that I built, James in this room as well. And where you saw me was Ignite, who was on the show last week. Those guys were the first ones that found out and said, hey, we got these things that are going on. And I was like, let me know how I can help, and just kind of stay in the ecosystem and have a face-to-face, being able to meet, so many people coming in and out. That's such a huge value for me. But they've also taken me in for as a family member, and they didn't have to. So I, pour my heart and soul into the work that I do for them on a volunteer side, and hope to find something that I can, become a further partnership for them. And I think that's the other thing, is everybody came out of the woodwork, knowing what happened, and it's been absolutely heartwarming coming forward.
Another example, Lisa, of why community is important with this, where you can just show up. And I see the common denominator between Capella, James, and now Greg, where they're just continue to learn, whether they're employed, starting their own business, or unemployed. And Joe touched on that too. We're winding down, Lisa. Just want to check in you before we check out.
Yeah, well, I'd say my community cup is full today. That was an incredible variety of insights and takeaways for our audience. So great job, everybody.
All right.
That's
Thank
fun.
you, Lisa. And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Silicon Valley Impact. You can join us here every Tuesday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Make sure to follow us at Los Gatos Lifestyle on Instagram as well, who is a big partner of this. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, talk about your startup, or showcase your local business, you can contact me at brian@siliconvalleyimpact.com. That's brian@siliconvalleyimpact.com. Or reach out to Lisa on LinkedIn. She's also a phenomenal executive coach, so check out her profile on LinkedIn at Lisa Helfrich. This is edited for radio and produced by Pirate Cat Radio, KPCR 92.9 FM in Los Gatos. Thanks to our guests, James, Capella, Joe, Greg, and the voice behind the mic, Brian. Thank you all, Lisa, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Show.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to the guests, and thank you to this. I'm just going to give a plug to our studio here. We're recording for KPCR at Podcats LG in Los Gatos. You guys did a great job as usual. Thank you all.
Thank you.